going to kick things off. I'm going to go to Skyler. We've got nearly 50 people in, so I think that's pretty good. So let's get going. And Skyler, it's 12:05. I'm going to hand it over to you. Welcome everybody, and enjoy today's Tableau user group. Okay.
All right. I assume you can see my screen, so I'm going to get started.
Yep, you're good to go.
All right. I am giving the user group remix of a talk that I gave in 2018 Tableau conference. So I'm borrowing some of those slides. So if you've seen that, it might be familiar. In lieu of an agenda, here is the playlist of all the things that I'll be talking about in this talk. And let's get started with the intro. So in this presentation, I'm going to be showing off several projects that I worked on at Spotify and posted onto Spotify's Tableau Public or onto my own Tableau Public. I'll demonstrate some of the tricks that I use to do these things or some of the ideas behind it, but it's not necessarily a step-by-step tutorial. It's more like a demonstration of what's possible. So some things might go kind of quickly, but it's sort of just to get a large breadth of things that are possible. And like I said, this is a remix of a prior talk, and I've added a special Ireland only section at the end of this. And if you want to watch that, you can just find it on Tableau's YouTube channel, or you can search Skyler Tableau Spotify and you'll find it pretty well. So let's get started. Quickly about me, my name's Skyler. I've been using Tableau for about 5 years. I started using Tableau to make visualizations about music and music festivals I was going to. I entered and won an IronViz feeder contest that put me on the IronViz stage in 2015. I kept posting a lot of visualizations on my Tableau Public. I got my dream job at Spotify making data visualizations and analysis about music. And I have been a Tableau ambassador for, I think, the last 4 years. So quick, some numbers and some stats before I get into the fun stuff, because you might be curious how we use Tableau at Spotify. We're on 2020.2. We usually upgrade. We have about 350 desktop users that are able to publish. We have about 4,000 people that have used Tableau server in the last 3 months, and we only use a production site. We don't use like a dev test QA. We have pretty lax rules around that, which is kind of like the Wild West, but it works for us. So moving into some of the fun stuff, Spotify has a For the Record blog where we can post insights or data stories. Most of the time they are very editorial and more like an article, and they're not really filled with Tableau visualizations, but sometimes they are. And when I first started at Spotify, I was aching to get my hands on some of the data that we have and build my own vizzes of questions that I had. And as a way to publish it, I worked with the people that run this blog and was able to publish some Tableau public dashboards and some other stories that I will walk through. And a quick legal disclaimer that we take privacy seriously because of GDPR. Any and all the insights that are published are done so in aggregates, and they do not contain any personal identifiable information. And we also don't share exact stream numbers, which would be considered like business information, and things are normally normalized. So the first project, and as I was putting this together, I realized may not be the most relevant to you because it is about the song Total Eclipse of the Heart in the United States a few years ago. But it illustrates how quickly something comes together. So back in 2017, everyone was obsessed in the US with the solar eclipse that was passing by. And then shortly after it, someone in Spotify asked, does anyone have experience with map visualization? I could use some help with a pretty fun quick hit project. And I responded on Slack, well, Tableau can do some pretty quick drag and drop map visiting. And so we got into a hangout. Like I said, it was about streams. of the song Total Eclipse of the Heart as the solar eclipse was passing. So we got data in every like 10-minute intervals of how many streams each United State streamed of the song. And we brought it into Tableau. And like almost immediately after putting that time on the pages shell, we could see like the very obvious correlation of people streaming the song as the actual eclipse was like peaking in the locations that they were. And so I was like, well, we definitely need to share this. This is like super interesting. And we thought how to best share it, and we came up with a GIF. So this is that GIF that we shared, and it's really just screenshots of Tableau stitched together in Photoshop and turned into a GIF. But so this is the way that we shared it. We posted it on the blog. It got upvoted highly on the Data is Beautiful subreddit, and it was talked about on sites like CNET. The next project was all about emoji. And as a quick sort of game, if you can tell what artist this is based on the emoji, this one's Beyonce. This special one, you can see it's not the Ireland flag, but it's close to it. And some berries, that's the cranberries. This one was pretty easy. David Bowie. And this one was harder. This is some like music and books and wolves and dragons. Is Ramin Djawadi, who is the Game of Thrones composer. And so I did all of that. And so all of the previous examples were data-driven. And so on Spotify, people can add emojis onto playlists like my Pancake Good Morning playlist. And so there's 35 million of those. And this is back in 2017. So there's probably even more now. But you can imagine if you look at all of those playlists and you look at all of the emojis that are in it, in the title and the artists that are in those playlists, and you just make a gigantic network in aggregate, you have so much interesting data that maps artists with emojis. And so this project was all about that. And so for this one, we actually did post 3 interactive dashboards onto a Tableau public, which you could explore now. And here is a quick demonstration of that. For the top artist, it shows the top distinctive emojis that are used to describe playlists with that artist in them, like Nicki Minaj, the peach emoji. We could filter this dashboard by by genre. So you can see like country music and hip hop and EDM all have very distinctive types of emoji, or you can search your own emoji, like our good favorite poo emoji, and you can see that like Kids Bop Kids is on a lot of poo playlists. And I sort of alluded to it before, but in looking at this, it became very obvious, and it's probably something y'all are very well aware of, that people do not know what the Ireland flag looks like versus the Ivory Coast flag. And so here's an example of all of the times that U2 was miscountryed, I guess, or artists that are actually not from Ireland but are associated with drinking holidays are in there too. And here, this will come up later, but a particular favorite of Bewitched has cheese as the #1 most distinctive emoji. So in my actual talk, I go through a demonstration where I connect to BigQuery and show doing an actual little miniature analysis, but I will just leave that as a teaser because I have some more interesting things that I can show you. So I'm just going to skip some of these slides where I talk about how this emoji project came to be, but I encourage you to watch the recording. So the next one is Last Christmas, and again, 2017, and this one's all about crafting a story. So on the website, everynoise.com, Spotify actually publishes a lot of really interesting information about genres, and on everynoise.com/xmyth, it publishes sort of like this spaghetti hairball graph of Christmas stream share by each country, beginning I think in July or August. And so this data is all out there, but it's just data. It's not very insightful, and you can't really, other than like the very large scale shapes, you can't really tell what's happening or get really anything out of it. So we wanted to make a data story that would be more interesting and could be shared by PR and on the blog. And so we took this data, and my first thought was like, I've seen people using bump charts, and so I thought maybe we could make a bump chart to sort of rank each country, but even then I thought this was messy and I couldn't really get a story out of it. It still required a ton of just like cognitive power to look at it. And so I changed the question I was asking. I was like, so what I'm really getting after here is I want to know when a country started seriously streaming Christmas music. And I said, well, maybe seriously means the date when a country's stream share goes over 2%. And so this is a part of the visual, the data viz that we actually made, which is a dot plot for that puts the country's flag on the date where they exceed 2%. So we can see Ireland there in 2017 on November 18th. That's when they seriously got into Christmas music. I don't know how much that actually rings true to you. But so we had this entire, we were able to plot like all of the countries on this graph. You can see the Philippines starting very early in October, then Scandinavia, Canada, and the United States, then a lot of the rest of Europe. And I thought it was interesting that Mexico was the last to pass in December of 9. Here is a short demonstration in Tableau of me making that graph. And so I brought out every country onto the details shelf, and I made that first 2% date. So I'm bringing that onto columns. Right now it's just discrete, so I can see sort of the histogramness of it coming together. I will turn it into shapes because I have loaded up all of the country flags into custom shapes. And so you can see there sort of like a histogram, but of course I want the date to be on a continuous scale so that you can see the difference. And I'm using index as a way to make each country stack on top of each other. And that is the basics of that visualization. So we published that one. You can check it out on the Tableau public page. It has some more interesting things about the actual content and what songs are most popular. I'm sure Fairy Tale of New York is there. The next one is also one I'm sort of going to quickly skip over, and you'll see why, but it was all about maps. And because it's the United States, again, I won't spend too much time on it, but in the original talk, I do demonstrate how I make this hex map, but this was a fun Pride-related project that visualized the top artist on LGBT playlist in the United States, broken out by each state. And again, I like to use like artist artwork or country artwork to stand in for the items. So the next project was about Joy Division, and I call it tongue-in-cheek vising because it was sort of a joke that started it. So you're probably familiar with the iconic album artwork of Joy Division's Unknown Pleasures. It's this graph of a bunch of star data. And there was that one summer where on Twitter, everyone sort of like was very into this type of plot, and they were making what was essentially just area charts like stacked behind each other. And Jenny Bryan proposed that we call these things joy plots. And I just remember hearing about joy plots like all the time and seeing it on my Twitter feed. And I thought, what if I made a joy plot about Joy Division? Because I have access to a bunch of streaming data. I bet I could find a data set that sort of like reverse engineering the viz, where I find the data set and then like stick it into a format. It's almost like it was a meme. So I am going to demonstrate how I did a joy plot. I start out with 80 rows of 1 day time series. So 80 days total, each broken out by 1 day, of streams of Joy Division in the UK, because I wanted everything to be within one time zone, and the Joy Division UK connection made it seem like an easy method, like an easy rule to come up with what data set to use. So I start out with just each row representing a date. I'm going to take date off of the row shelf. So now all of the lines are stacked on top of each other. I turn it into an area chart. I turn the fill to black, and I set the border to some other colors, but I know I want to use white because that's what the actual viz uses. I've sort of cheated, but I have in my measures in my fields, I have some offsets that I'm applying, that I'm using like a Goldilocks method of parameters to see like what exactly, like if I tweak it this way or that, which way will make it look like the album art. And so I created this, and it is, like I said, just a bunch of area charts that are sort of stacked or offset on top of each other, where the one like closest to the viewer, like on like above all the others, is the one at the bottom. And so it gives the effect that it is made the same way as the Joy Division cover. So we published this on Tableau Public and tweeted it, and that was a fun project to work on. And I think you can find it by Googling or going to this, the Tableau Public site. All right, and then one of the last ones, I have a few more, is the planets. It's a musical solar system, but also a data viz project for all. So you probably saw me, you're probably thinking as I was presenting those, that's like, well, Skyler, you have access to a lot of really cool data, of course. There's a lot of stories you can come up with and a lot of things you can do. And so this is a demonstration of a project that I did like without being an actual Spotify employee. This is something that anyone could have done because the data is out there. And so I got this idea when I was listening to Gustav Holst's The Planets, and you can sort of tell the vizzes on the right that I drew a lot of inspiration from the album artwork that was there. And I thought, what if I remade the solar system using metadata and information about the planets, which is a suite of classical music where each track, I know it's not really a track, but each track is named after a planet, and there's like interesting things about it, like it's not in the right order, and different songs have different popularity. So I thought, what if I sized the planets by how many streams they have? And in the Spotify desktop, if you just hover over the third column here, you can get the actual stream number. So I just manually scraped this data. And I thought, what if I order them in the order that they're in here? So I think I had what Mars is first. And I thought I wanted, because it's solar system and there's like an orbit, a natural orbit there, I want to animate it. And so I thought, what if each planet orbits the like length of the track? And because I wanted to do that and I wanted some animation, and Tableau doesn't really have like a live updating like animation capability, I was able to do that by embedding it in a website and using JavaScript to just refresh the viz every second. And so every second the JavaScript just kicks in and it runs the viz again. And because it's calculating like based on the now function, it's like can be like, now it's 100 seconds, and then like the next second it's 101 seconds, and I just do the math to put it on the solar system. And you can check it out at skybyjohnson.com/theplanets. And the code to do that is on GitHub. And so there are other ways that you could access some of this data. Like I said on the right, you could just go to the album and the artist page in Spotify, and you can hover over and you can manually see the number of streams of certain songs. There's also an API that has a lot of information, and probably most of the Tableau Public or Tableau music visualizations you see that have Spotify data are using the Spotify API in some way. And the developer.spotify.com is a great resource of demonstrating all of the things that you can get from the API, and I'm going to do some demonstrations shortly. But there is also, and with caveat, because mileage may vary, I found sometimes it works really well and sometimes it doesn't, but there is a Spotify web data connector at https://spotify-wdc.herokuapp.com. And I will do a quick demonstration of using the web data connector, but you can get data about your top artist and your top tracks for certain time periods. And you can also get just a list of all of the tracks that you've saved in your liked songs. And that's what this demonstration will do. So starting out with a blank Tableau, I'm connecting to a web data connector. I paste in that link. I sign in to my Spotify. I have to authenticate to use the API. I select one of these options and I'm brought into the data source. Like I said, albums, artists, top tracks. I'm just going to select tracks. It sets it as an extract because it's a web data connector. And I'm going to go into the viz. It's going to make the extract. I had about 6,000 tracks, so I just sort of shortcutted this little demo video. So now I'm in Tableau. I bring out the added at time, and so I'm just going to visualize my running total of when I've added tracks in the last 6 years. But I'm curious if there's any patterns or trends there. So I'm going to actually look at that same data based on the weekday, day of week. And so I'm making this bar chart showing the tracks that I add on each day. And this makes a lot of sense to me to see spikes on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, because that is when Spotify has Discover Weekly, which releases on a Monday, and I listen to that every Monday, but sometimes Tuesday, and Release Radar and new music comes out on Friday. So it makes sense that that is where I add music. And so you could do this exact same thing if you have a Spotify account right now using the web data connector. And I teased that I added a special section just for this tug, and it is about dreaming more visualizations and vizzing it, and it is a Python plus Spotify API demo. So like I said, the API reference documentation is really good. It goes through all of the things that are available, some things you might not think are available, some things that are. For instance, for every track, there's certain attributes about it, like danceability. That gives it a score. I'll do some demonstration. If you're familiar with R or Python, there's some packages that make this really easy to access. I'm not that familiar with R, but if you are, Adolfo Hernandez has a great blog post about getting started with it. For Python, there's this Spotify package, which I am going to demonstrate, which I use a lot of times to scrape data for external purposes. I've also put some examples of using the Spotify package on my GitHub, and you could really just copy and plug in your own credentials because you need to go to the developer site to register your app, but it's very much plug and play, or it should be. So my first example, I'm going to turn a text list of tracks into Spotify UI. This is, for instance, if you are on a website and you see the top 100 Irish tracks of all time, and you want to turn that into a playlist quickly so that then maybe you can do some data analysis on it. That is what this could do using the search endpoint of the API, where you just give it a string and it returns the best guess of what a track would be. So here is a demonstration of me. I'm just starting out going to this text to URI Python script, and I've loaded it up in my Python IDE. And like I said, I, in my browser, found this list of the top 100 greatest Irish tracks of all time. And it's in a format easy enough where I can just copy it into Notepad. And I do some cleanup, like removing some of the lines, the empty new line. And so I have this long list of strings that I basically just plug into this input CSV that I have. And I run the script that I have using that. So now for every line in that note, it will identify the Spotify track. You can see it's not finding certain things, and I think maybe that's because I'm running it as an American, and some of these things may not be licensed here. But so now I could do some other things with it, and those other things with it could be what I demonstrate in the next. So like I said, each track has a bunch of information and attributes about it. So this endpoint, given a playlist, will go through every track in that playlist and get a bunch of metadata about each track. So I wrote a example that you just paste in a playlist and it will do that. It will create a CSV with all of the tracks in that playlist and all of the attributes about that track and genres and release dates. So I happen to have a perfect playlist just to demonstrate that. And you can tell I am a fan of Eurovision. So I will show off this last demo where I am taking this Python script. I've loaded it up already. I just pasted in the URI of the playlist, and I will run it. And I've added just some prints to make it so I can watch it compute all of this, and you can see all of the tracks that are in there. These are all tracks I put together in the last few days of Irish bands that I like. So this created two CSVs, a CSV of all the tracks and a CSV of all the tracks and a mapping to their genres because there's a many-to-many relationship. So I opened up a blank Tableau and I'm just going to drag that Irish track CSV that it created into Tableau. And I'm going to use the new data relationships to join a relationship between tracks to genre. It's joined using URI. I'm going to bring out all of those tracks. These are all the attributes that I'm selecting. You can see like things like energy, danceability, acousticness. I can inspect what Spotify thinks has the highest energy, which is oddly Sunday, Bloody Sunday, but also there's C'est la vie. And I'm going to do another viz where I'm just looking at the release date compared to the popularity of all of these tracks. And I'm making a scatter plot. And because I wanted to use the tooltip, I'm going to throw the artist name and the track name. So the least popular track that I like, I learned how to say it was Leisha, a very cool pop artist. And the oldest tracks that I added in there were from U2. There's Bewitched again. And I am going to use the genre because I brought those in and used that relationship. And I can, for instance, filter this to just look at dance pop. Now, if that is frightening to you or you're not familiar with Python, there is this site, Organize Your Music. You could just Google it. And because I don't have too much more time, I'm not going to go through this demonstration. But if you paste in the URI in here, you can get the the website that basically looks like a table, and you can just copy and paste it into Excel or Google Sheets. And you're essentially getting the same information without using a Python script. So this is the Organize Your Music site. So I hope that was inspiring in a way to make you think about your data in a different way, to use APIs or open data if the data that you personally work with day to day is not something as interesting that you can share. But there probably is, like I said, open data or data sets that you can access to, that you can use your industry expertise to apply and make a really cool Tableau public visualization that skills you up, boost your portfolio of sorts, and also is just a fun thing to contribute. So you can find me on Tableau Public on my personal page and also the Spotify page. And thanks.
Oh, Skyler, absolutely, hats off. I've never seen such a sort of busy chat window. I mean, it's some of the stuff.
I haven't gotten to see the chat.
I know. Well, it's just been amazing. Like, people are just so impressed, I think, and delighted with what they're seeing here. And hats off, and serious kudos for the correct pronunciation of the name Leisha. That is a very difficult name to pronounce. It doesn't actually make much sense to people outside of Ireland. So in terms of spelling, so well done for that. There's a few questions that people have. There was one from Paul Hardman on the connector, I think, for Spotify. Is that publicly available? And I think it is, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
After Neil, I'll post a whole bunch of links.
Cool. Okay.
Things that.
Okay. The other thing, then, there's a couple of other questions. There's, can you describe the data culture of Spotify, and how important is visualization to Spotify? That's from somebody anonymous. It would be lovely to know who that was.
Yeah, the data culture is actually pretty free and autonomous. People are allowed to use R or Python or Tableau or other tools of their choosing. People are very hungry for data here, I find. And we really have a culture of this, like, if you can think it, then you have access to the tools to build it or visit or analyze it.
Cool. Okay, that's great. Okay. Another one here from Keith. Hi, Skyler. You mentioned a guy to follow who uses OR for Spotify in today's video. Please, can you repeat his name?
Yep, Adolfo Hernandez. I'll post the link.
Yeah, I remember seeing that link. All right, yeah, that's cool. And then David Okeneja, how you doing, David? Is asking, have you any personal favorite visualizations? That's a good one.
I have many of the things that Neil will probably present on. I love anything that has music. It's always a way to win me over, especially if you're using the Spotify API.
Cool. Okay, that's great. Okay, one more. We'll take one more because we have a little bit of time. And do you use? Okay. Do you use your information to predict the future, or see any correlation in the music that is played to sentiment, to what is happening in any given country? I think you probably do.
we have a lot of that data. We definitely do, like, some sentiment and other types of analysis, and also a lot of forecasting. Probably not at, like, the well, we do some forecasting at the artist level, but most of our forecasting is just in general, like, metrics of number of users we have or subscribers.
Okay, cool. Okay, just before we move on, if it's okay, because I do want to bring Neil Richards in, if that's okay. And I'm going to say thank you again, Skyler. I mean, there are still questions coming in, but I will probably feed them to you after we've heard from Neil. I just want to update people on a few things. I just posted in there just updates on the Tableau community forums that they've moved to a new platform since July, and so the Tableau are now using Salesforce Community Cloud, and Kira Brennan, who looks after those forums, was saying we'd love for more people in Ireland to check out the forums and to use the boards, right? So basically what I've done is I've published in the webinar chat links to those in Cork, Dublin, which has 67 members, and Northern Ireland has a separate one as well. And there's also a link there to the community newsletter, okay, that you can see news is coming up. Also, just to flag, there is one other event that is coming up on Friday, if I can. It basically with Colin Moynihan from Snowflake, our own Daniel Ling from the Information Lab Ireland, and Uli Bethke from Sonra. And basically, to cut a long story short, they're going to be using open data and see how you can visualize that to help businesses or individuals to figure out what's the best country or city or suburb to live in. So it's all about spatial analytics and that kind of thing. So that promises to be pretty interesting. So I'm going to post a link, and I know on here, you know, without he doesn't need me to bring him up, but there's a lot of people of Daniel Ling and what the work he does. So there'll be a lot of people on here who will be interested in that, hopefully. All right. So I'm going to pop that in there if that's okay, guys. And also we'll be posting photos and the video and all that kind of thing, but we'll get to that later on. Neil Richards has been waiting patiently in the wings. So I would love to hand it over to Neil. Skyler, thank you so much. I hope you'll stick around and we'll catch up afterwards. Neil, over to you, and thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Let me share my screen, and we should be away.
Yeah, I can see that there, just to let you know. So you're looking good.
All right, that's great. Thanks very much, Skyler. I really enjoyed that. It was quite interesting to me to find out how different your talk was, and yet how many similarities there's going to be actually. So I enjoyed finding those connections. But anyway, let's make a start. So my name is Neil Richards. I'm going to talk about visualizing music, and really what I want to do is just sort of cover a whole range of different ideas, different ways you can visualize music in all sorts of different manners, and just see if any of this gives you inspiration, how you might want to visualize music in the future, or just, you know, give you some ideas of stuff to look for, although you've had plenty of those already from Skyler. So again, just to start with me, I just sort of use my my bio here as the knowledge director of the Data Viz Society, but it explains that I've been using Tableau for a little while. Slight change to this, I was a Zen master in 2018. I am again in 2020, which I think makes me the first ever boomerang Zen. And the reason I think that I'm a Zen is because I just love to do different stuff in the community. I love to try stuff outside of work. I love to try different sort of creative stuff. And then, you know, I love to talk about it. I love to come to user groups, and I love to inspire and explain to others how they might like to do that. This is a bit of a random photo, but I think it's sort of, with apologies to Simon Beaumont there, I think it sort of sums up my Tableau journey. This was sort of about 2 or 3 years ago. As you can see there, I was at the University of Nottingham. I was at a tug back when they were physical things. I was in the front row. I was taking a photo. I was pretending to take a photo of Simon doing his talk, and his talk was amazing. He was back at the NHS in Southampton at the time, explaining some of the great initiatives that he brought to engage his team. But I actually just moved my phone a little bit way round and took a photo of the wallpaper, and I thought, wouldn't that make a cool biz? And I did a lot of things where I used to sort of try and take inspiration from particularly art and design and things that I might find. So I've done lots of sort of talks on design. I've never spoken about music before, which is why I'm sort of quite excited to do that. Now, it's kind of gone full circle, because all the things that you can learn from doing Tableau creatively, from exploring, from doing personal projects, these all help to make you quite good at Tableau anyway. And as of 2 or 3 weeks ago, I started a brand new job where I now work with Simon, who's right there, and he's doing some amazing stuff in JLL, and I'm honored to join the team and sort of start to implement some of the things that he does. So I was paying attention then, honestly. But here's an example, an Irish example as it happens. I saw some well, my notes say art in air quotes like that, some artwork on a Manchester hotel wall. And within a week, I thought, I know what I'm going to do for my makeup on Monday. So I love to just sort of find inspiration, things that are different, things that are geometric or artistic or whatever you might want to call them, and see how I can adapt them, do them in Tableau, and maybe sort of put some data behind them. All right, but let's talk about visualizing music. And although I'm going to talk about visualizing music, I'm actually going to sort of split this into two halves, and partly visualizing music and partly, for want of a sort of better topic, visualizing everything else. And by everything else, I mean, what different types of data visualization can we do around music without actually sort of visualizing the notes and the music itself? So let's start with Eurovision, similarity number one with Skyler here. When I first agreed to do this talk, had a chat with Johnny, and he said, oh, I love your Eurovision Song Contest quiz. It's from a few years ago. And he said, oh, it's one thing that Ireland always do better than UK. And well, yes, I think most people do better than UK, but Ireland certainly do. And this was just the first example of many where I just learned how to have fun with music data visualizations, because you might think that Eurovision is music in the loosest sense of the term, but there is so much metadata around this that you can visualize. You've got countries, you've got voting, who from, who to, you've got number of points, you've got the year and the date, you've got what happened in previous years, you've got overall position, all that kind of stuff. And so I had great fun looking at this data set of Eurovision results, and it also gave me a chance to do something new. I thought, I know, I'm going to try and do a hex map of all the countries in Europe, or all the countries in Europe who've taken part in Eurovision. And if that hadn't been done before, it certainly hadn't been done before with Australia in. So that was a little bit of an extra challenge. And I put some interactivity in so you could see how countries always sort of traditionally vote for their, their friends and neighbours. Or do they? Yeah, I noticed that United Kingdom traditionally give 8.2 points to Ireland and only 2.7 to other countries. What about Ireland? What are their favourite friends and neighbours? Denmark, Latvia and Lithuania? Okay, right, well, thanks guys. That maybe explains why we barely scored a point in the last 20 years. But joking aside, there was a lot of fun to be had in that, and that's just one example of some metadata you can get around music visualizations there. And here's the next one. This is not polished at all. This is one of the first vizzes I ever did, or certainly in my first year or two. And you can't see anything in there. I decided over the course of several weekends to scrape the data of every chart ever in the 1980s. So if you'd have asked me what was my favorite decade of music, I've definitely said the 1980s. And it took me a long time, because I don't really know how to scrape data, but that doesn't matter. In a personal project, you can take your time. You can copy and paste how many charts that is. That's 520 pop charts. You can copy and paste that into Excel. But I went down so many rabbit holes because I saw bands that I'd forgotten all about. So instead of going on to the next year, I would stop and listen to their music, or I'd go and see what happens about that particular song. So all that you can do on personal projects, you can, so long as it's data that you consider fun, that you consider interesting, it kind of doesn't really matter if you're doing things longhand, because you can find additional stories in it. I mean, this was just supposed to be, I came with lots of different visits around this, and this was supposed to be just a giant exploratory viz. And if you highlighted a band you were choosing, I've just picked one here, you could see the story of, let's say, Madness in the 1980s. You could see how they, most of their early 80s stuff sort of peaked up in the sort of top 5, but they only had one number 1 there. And as the decade went on, their hits were a little bit fewer and further between, and had different kind of projectiles there. And of course, there's a story for every band there. The people have done much better music visits than I have. If you haven't seen this, you might have been living under the sort of proverbial rock. I would definitely recommend you have a look. This is by Adam McCann. It's been seen by millions of people, and it's a gorgeous visualization about the Beatles and who wrote the songs. There aren't 5 Beatles there. The one on the left is a hybrid of Lennon and McCartney. So those that had the combined credits, they come from the orange lines there, and then you've got one from each of the others. But here's more data that you can visualize. You can visualize dates. You can visualize, again, the ranking, the Billboard chart. And actually further down, he goes and looks at what words are used in most songs. So I think, you know, there's a lot of peace and love in most of these. And if you looked at Ringo, he mostly sang about octopuses and gardens. A bit of a small sample size there. And here's a similar one, Roddy Zakovich. I'm sure it's probably inspired by the Beatles one, in fact. But again, you know, you can get some gorgeous imagery around just metadata around looking at music. So he's looked at Queen. He's looked at all the different albums. He's looked at the number of words in each of the songs in the album, and he's looked at the number of songs in each album, and all these different things he's been able to add there as well. This isn't Tableau, but this is probably one of my favorite visualizations of all time. It's a project, if you like, and it's called Oddity Viz, and it's a set of, I think, 10 gorgeous record style visualizations. It's an art exhibition, really, but each one of the 10 are looking at different aspects of just one song, which was Space Oddity by David Bowie. The ones that I've sort of chosen very randomly, one looks at texture, one looks at the rhythms in the song, one looks at harmonies, one looks at structure. Over the 10, there's all sorts of different ways of looking at the different metadata around this song, and all of them are sort of circular and have the look of a traditional LP there, and have a really sort of nice look to them. And this, as well as, you know, admiring the work, it confirmed my thoughts, which are that really you can visualize pretty much anything on or around music and albums and the information around it. So I then went on to, I decided I was going to visualize an album. It was my favorite album, but it was up there, and I chose Flood by They Might Be Giants. It was a 1990 album. It's fairly obscure. I chose it because it's not serious. Some of the, you might know Birdhouse in your song. Some of the songs are quite daft. So I knew there was going to be some interesting things in there, some interesting words. I knew they have one song which only has 2 words in it, for example. So I thought I'm going to find some nice little quirky stuff. And I had this in my half-done visualizations for a few months, where I just looked at all the words, size by syllable, and sort of see how they progressed through the album. But in May, I decided, you know, having come to the decision, there are so many different ways that you can visualize music without necessarily looking at the notes. I thought, I wonder if I can do 31. I wonder if I can make this a month-long project. So on day 2, I looked at all the words and saw how how some of them were only showing up in one song. Well, there's only one song about Constantinople, and how so many of the others are distributed through the rest of the songs. And it made a nice, cool tree map. Day 11, I can hear the sighs of relief now that I'm not doing all 31 days here. I've just sort of picked a cluster of them to show you. This took inspiration from an earlier viz by Chris Love, where he looked at repetition of words, and I did something similar, where I sort of started a spiral, and, you know, they would go sort of straight and to the right if we weren't repeating words, and they would become more tightly curled to the left, so anti-clockwise where they were. And that just gave every song a really different, unique kind of fingerprint. I started looking at the structure. I thought, well, you can look at the lines in terms of, is it the verse, is it the bridge, is it the intro, what you might call the outro, or is it the chorus? So I used different colors and different structures regularly to come up with that one for each song. Some of them were quite simple. This is just looking at the word lengths and sort of reflecting them, and they all kind of look a little bit like sound waves there. And again, they're normalized so that all have the same width. So up in the red there, you can see the song with only 2 words. But again, that gave all of them their own kind of sound wave. Something a little bit more stylized. I went back to my roots and thought, well, can I replicate one of their album covers with what's essentially a bar chart of the song lengths, with the widths being how wordy, how many words there were in each one. And that came out quite nicely, I think. And I thought, once we got into the 20s, I was running out of what we could do with the words, so I went down to the letters. You might ask, how can I look at the letters in there and come up and fit 26 letters into a perfect 5x5 grid? Turns out they never sang a single word with the letter Q. And again, I looked at, I just wanted something a little bit more abstract here, looking at the length of each song 9. So many different ways I could look at it. I could look at it in terms of words, letters, length, structure, lines, all these different things. Now I actually put a little bit here about the Spotify API. I thought Skyler would probably mention this, and so you'll be able to see a lot of great stuff from him. Right before the end, he mentioned sort your music, and this is one thing that I've used before and seen a lot of people use. You literally just go to that URL. If you've got what you want to look at or analyze already in a playlist, then boom, it's there for you. And these, and again, you've heard Skyler mention these are some but not all of the things that you can then analyze. So we've got beats per minute, energy, danceability, etc., etc. This one I did this for a bit of fun. You can't see it brilliantly because I actually made it into a big poster, and I made it for my parents. My parents, one who loves Presley and one who loves the Beatles. And I thought, right, well, not let's see who's best, but you know, let's compare and contrast. So I chose some of the Spotify figures there and did some just sort of concentric circles to visualize them on a sort of timeline like that. One caveat, I couldn't really use popularity because popularity was very seasonal. I pulled all the data at Christmas, which meant that it was all skewed by the popularity of Elvis's awful Christmas, sorry, I wasn't supposed to say awful, Elvis's Christmas songs. And it meant that the popularity of his other stuff was kind of down. So do just sort of take a look and see if there's odd things happening in the data. But we've got just the chance to look at the valence and the energy and some of the other particular attributes there. Again, people have done much cooler, better stuff. This from Lindsay Poulter was an IronVis feeder last year, and it won, so we got her up on the IronVis stage, purely looking at valence scores of Broadway musicals. So she's done some amazing stuff here, looking at the overall scores. You can find Phantom of the Opera right down at the bottom there. So clearly has the least cheerful music, if you like, amongst all Broadway musicals. And then she looks at the sort of the timeline of them all like that on the right-hand side. And I definitely recommend you check that one out. It's a beautifully designed, really interesting viz. This one from Robert Januzek. He's really gone into the Spotify and he's put a mechanism, which I've highlighted a little bit on the left there, whereby you can just put your preference. You can put whether you want something that's got a lot of speech, a lot of danceability, etc. You might want it to be low acoustic, etc., etc. This finds a Spotify playlist for you and visualizes using those kind of radar charts the profile of each of them. So that's a lot of fun as well. But in terms of, I've talked about visualizing the bits that aren't music, and I just want to go about visualizing the bits that are music. So start with an alphabet here. I mean, I consider probably the truest ultimate form of data visualization is the alphabet. If I want to talk to you or say words, if you want to record them or visualize what I've said or understand what I've said, you write them down, and providing you're sort of in most of Europe or UK or US or Hispanic places, you can use any combination pretty much of these symbols in a unique way, which means you'll understand what I've said and you'll be able to see and understand and explain that to others. With traditional music score, pretty much the same. So long as you use any combination of most of these symbols in a certain way and arrange them, then it can be passed on and understood and visualized. There's just one example. There's a brilliant Twitter feed called Musical Notation is Beautiful, which every so often, well, quite regularly, will just post some really just examples, quite often of handwritten, quite often of not, just musical scores. And in this, even if you don't read music, you can start to see some really intriguing looking geometrical patterns or things that really look sort of quite nice and artistic. And this, who remembers Guitar Hero? This is also music visualization. The tune comes towards you. If you press the right buttons at the right time, and the encoding on the color encoding on each button tells you which chord you're going to play. Press them at the right time, which is coming vertically towards you, the time encoding. you get points, but you also get to play the tune correctly. So this is another great example of a music data visualization. So when I decided I wanted to start visualizing music, I was particularly inspired by Nicholas Rouget. You can see his name up at the top left there, and his website is c82.net. He did a project called Off the Staff, where he doesn't use Tableau, but he used a different bit of kit to try and visualize music. And you can see in this kind of radial way, looking at the notes. And I thought that's what I want to try and emulate in Tableau. Now, let me just play this for you in the background and see if this works. Oh, it's not working. There we go. Hope I'm not deafening you there. Going to turn that down for a bit there. I decided when a feeder for the IronViz all about water, I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to compete with people who can do beautiful visualizations, beautiful designs, water drops, light blue, long form visualizations all about water. So I decided to think outside the box, and I was going to visualize Handel's water music. And this, it's the front page of what I came up with, based heavily on Nicholas Rouget's work, deciding how can I visualize this radially, and then how can I animate it and mix it with the tune. I'll spare you the rest of that. But there's other ways you can do it. Yeah, Skyler mentioned that there was this one year where everybody was just doing joy plots of everything. Yeah, I was guilty of that. Here's a joy plot. So again, you can just sort of take that data, that digitized data. I just looked, each line is a different musical instrument, and it shows the range of what they played in water music there. So you can see the flutes and strings section at the top going down to the brass and presumably the double bass further down there at the bottom. You can visualize it in much more simple ways. I visualize it just going from in to out there, looking at the differences between different musical instruments. Are they playing at the same time? Are they stopped at the same time? Are there patterns in the notes that they're playing? And who thought you would hear twice about Holst's the planets? I also decided to visualize Holst's the planets, just statically. I thought, if I'm looking at something like this, I wonder, can I find differences? Does Saturn and Venus look different? Does Mars and Jupiter, etc.? And again, I had a lot of fun just producing this and placing them in the position of the planets. Nothing moves here, I'm afraid, but this was another really good opportunity to look at to look at pieces using that visualization style. And finally, I mentioned I love the 1980s. A shout out for the 1680s. For those of you who know Pachelbel's canon, I don't know any musical piece that's better suited to being visualized because of all the kind of geometric patterns that are going on. Even if you're not familiar with it, you might have heard it because Pachelbel's canon, or the theme behind it, runs in things like Crying by Aerosmith, or it runs in things like All Together Now by The Farm. And so I just wanted to show how every single repetition of the tune there, of what we call the bassa profondo, the bass line, is absolutely identical, and yet how all the other themes will come in and sort of repeat overlapping wise, so with a different color for 2 to 3 sections each. I also visualized and animated that one as well, but I might skip over that. Incidentally, in terms of animating, I haven't got any great explanation or secret. My animation style is like Wallace and Gromit. You know how if you see 30 seconds, it's actually like 2,000 images stitched together. That's actually what this is, and what my water music one is. Just a lot of screenshots all pasted, or rather all merged together in something like iMovie, and then played in exactly the same time with the original music. Okay, if I have time, and please guys sort of jump in if I don't, because I'm conscious we've gone past 1 o'clock. I just want to do a really quick demo on how you can basically create your own radial visualization like that from a piece of music. And I'm going to
yeah, I'd say
jump
go for
in.
It.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I was about to
Yeah,
jump
go
in and
for it.
say,
Yeah,
rock,
I'd love to see that.
rock out. Yeah, go
Yeah,
for it.
yeah.
All right, well, let's go then. So what I would recommend that you do is what you first need is you need a MIDI file. MIDI files are sort of fairly, turn my volume up actually because I turned it down with the music. MIDI files are fairly easy to get hold of. Best thing that I found is a site called MuseScore. Now, anything that's there has been sort of publicly contributed, or it's been worked out by its contributors. So they're quite happy for you to find something and download. And I came with the idea last night. I thought, right, what should we look at? And I thought, who remembers the Ski Sunday theme tune? That was a sort of a bit of fun, nice orchestral piece. And it's actually a piece of classical music called Pop Lux Bach. So this is what it looks like. I recommend checking it out. Have a look, see if it's got, you know, I love to visualize pieces which have got loads of different instruments in, because that way you can see all the different variety. You might find it's actually just a piece for piano on one hand, and which is not so much fun. But once you've done that, you can click on play just to double check you've got the right thing. And I'm sure for those of you who remember, it's going to kick in shortly. And that's it. That takes me back to Sunday afternoons in the 80s watching skiing. So once you've done that, you go to download. Lots of options to download, but just make sure you download it as a MIDI. So that's stage one. Stage two is there's a conversion to run. Now, I'm not going to do it here because I've got it set up on my old computer, but not this one. But it's just one file to download and one command to write in, and that's it. It will literally take you 2 minutes. And that comes from Nicolas Rouger's website. So when you're on that, if you're looking at the behind the score visualizations, he explains how he does it. He links to this one file. I think it's a Python file, but I like Skyler said, you don't necessarily need to understand how to use it. Just type it in, type in your in file and your out file, and you get a CSV file. So my CSV file is here on my desktop. And let's just open that in Excel to see what it looks like. I don't have it open already. Okay, so you'll literally you'll find every note, every part. So the parts 1 to 11 are exactly the same parts that you saw listed in MuseScore. So I think 1 and 2 of first and second violin going all the way down through the orchestra. And you see how long each of the notes are in what they call ticks, and they also convert it to seconds as well. And then you have a pitch number. So going from down in the 30s for low ones to up in the 80s and 90s for high ones. And you also see it as the traditional number and octave there. So whether it's an F or G, etc., etc. And that's kind of enough. Now you can go into Tableau. And if I connect to the text file, let's go into that. You know what you could also do is open Tableau and drag the CSV file in. It's one of the most basic things you can do. And I watched Skyler do it and I thought, I completely forgot that you could do that. So I always enjoy taking the tiniest things away from talks, just see better, efficient ways that people do it. But anyway, here's our data. That's all come in as we might have expected. And it's really, you can get a something radial out in kind of no time at all. The only thing I wanted to, the only thing I wanted to look at right here, I'm going to scroll right to the bottom, is just see what is the value on the last note. So how many, what it calls ticks are there? And it goes all the way up to 195,000. So I want to do a circle which is going to go from 0 all the way around to 195,000, but let's call it 200,000. So I'm going to create a calculated field, and all I need is an angle. And for this angle, I'm going to do 1 over 200,000. So we know how far round in terms of ticks it's going to be. And then multiply that by what are called the start ticks, and then multiply that by 360, because there's 360 degrees in a circle. So that's the fraction round our note is. And then once you've worked out the angle in your head in degrees, Tableau needs to understand it in radians. There's a function radian, so you can just put that in brackets there and run it. And then all you need after that is an X and a Y. And everything I do in Tableau, and particularly my sort of art and design recreations, I just think, plot it as a scatter plot, plot it as X and Y, and then Tableau will do it for you. So X, I just want to simply put sine of the angle, and I'm going to multiply it by the pitch value. Oops. We know that pitch is going to be, it's going to give a circle then of a radius of somewhere between 30 and 90. So it's going to give us that nice space in the middle, because it never goes down to 0. And that actually, without having to do anything more, is a really nice way of doing it. I'm just going to copy that, because Y is going to be exactly the same, except I'm going to do cos. So I do apologize for bringing a bit of GCSE or O-level maths, but it's just really how you plot a position in a circle. And then once we put X on the rows and Y, sorry, X should have been on the columns, and Y on the rows, we don't want the sum, we just want the dimensions. Oh, you can see it already there. Let's make them circles. Let's put the part, which was the instrument, remember, from 1 to 12, we put it onto color. And we don't need it, so it is dimension. I'm actually going to make it discrete, because the number doesn't really matter. These are just discrete instruments. And we could maybe say the duration of each note, so duration in tick or seconds, it doesn't matter. Could put that on size. And you can do more to this, but you can already see how this is, how we've got a sort of radial visualization of something we didn't even have. We didn't even have the music till 5 minutes ago, but you can download it, run a very quick conversion on it, and then it's the calculations in Tableau are not too difficult to do. And that's sort of one way to get your visualization started. I hope it's a basic tip, but it's really easy to forget, and I forget sometimes, is when you're putting this into your dashboard, just make sure your X and Y are fixed, so they've both got exactly the same dimensions, and that way it'll show, that way you're showing it in a square, it'll come as a perfect circle. Otherwise, you don't want to do all this work and then drag it in and find that you've just made it slightly oval, that kind of thing. But that's the one bit of advice that I'll give you for that. And I'm going to go back here, because I've got one more slide which says thank you very much. That's all I'm going to show you, but I hope that's given you some really good ideas that if you're into music, you can have a lot of fun looking up any information about your favorite bands, your favorite contests, your favorite anything around music. And if you want to go further and look at the notes, the pitch, the music itself, then Tableau is a great way of doing that as well. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Neil, absolutely fantastic. Louise Shorten's just fired in a message into the chat there saying great presentation. Thanks, Neil. And all the way through, gorgeous visualizations, beautiful and very creative, and it's very difficult to disagree with that. Actually, I have a question for you on it, right? Because even when we were doing the tech check, and I sort of said, oh, lots of color, and there would be lots of people. I am a person who likes using color. Okay, I like color. Do you have to, when you're working, restrain yourself, and when you're using color, or what's your take on it?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, for example, when I was doing this Paco Bell visualization, I sent a message to Twitter saying, has anyone got any really good color palettes with 20 colors? And people said, you can't have 20 colors. You can only have 5, maybe 8. And I know, but for what I'm doing, I need 20. I'll explain why later. And there wasn't really any other way of doing it. It's I don't know. It's a simple answer. You know that if you're trying to show something with 12 different musical instruments, you want to make them all the same color, but it's going to be difficult to sort of tell them apart. When I did the handled one, I made all the string ones sort of orangey brown. I made all the woodwind ones purpley, and maybe you can't tell the difference brilliantly between them all, but there was different color categories, if you like.
Do you in your
one
sorry.
other thing.
Sorry, Neil. I'm talking over you, but do you bring the same into your work? Then I'm not going to say. Do you know what I mean?
No, I try and follow best practices in work. I mean, interestingly, just having started at a new job, I'm learning all about the color palette that we use there now. And you know, there aren't going to be very many business kind of dashboards where you want to see a lot of color and you want to see a lot of variation. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it's breaking out of that a little bit in personal projects where using color is a bit more fun.
Cool. Sorry for interrupting you there. Listen, if there's anybody else that has any questions, please feel free to fire them into the Q&A box there. I can tell you in the meantime the results of our polls, and maybe it shows the demographic more than anything, but the 80s have won hands down. 40% of you voted that the 80s was the best era for music, closely followed, well, not closely followed, it's 26% say the 90s are better. The 60s only got 4%, which I think is, given that the whole thing kind of kicked off in the 60s, is I don't know, are we forgetting them? 70s 8%, but anyway, we'll post the results of this later on. The 10s, which is not good for the young generation, only got 6%, and then the noughties 16%. So the 80s and 90s are rocking it at the moment. There's another question just come in here from Louise. It's a good question. Do you ever get stuck for inspiration, or is there always a list of ideas in your head? I guess that's for Neil, but we can put that to Skyler as well. It doesn't look like you get stuck for ideas.
Yeah. No, I do get stuck for inspiration. I haven't done much since my project in May, which is quite a long gap for me. I'm always aware that what is out there is pretty much infinite. So, you know, if you're stuck for inspiration one day, something will come later. So, you know, if I'm stuck, I'll go back to an old favorite. I might visualize a new piece the same kind of way I've done the last one, get going again, and then maybe come up with something more creative for the future. But yeah, I always look to other people, other visualizations for inspiration, and usually I find something.
And does it inform, does a lot of what you do, again, going back to the work thing, but does a lot of what you do outside of work inform what you do in work? I mean, are you flexing a Tableau muscle in your brain basically by doing all the stuff that you do outside?
Yeah, I think that's the answer, really. I mean, you can be looking at something and think, I remember an early project I was on thinking, oh, I'm stuck here. How on earth do I do it? And then I had a light bulb moment that I needed to use a level of detail. And I thought, it's one of those things I heard people using. It's quite early in my career, and I've never used it at work. I never really understood it. But by using it to do something that I considered tricky in what I was trying to do at the time, I think I was visualizing something on cricket in one of my album cover visualizations. My light bulb went up, and I was then a more confident to use level of detail when I went back to work. So it's very much a sort of you know, sort of zigzag like that. You learn in work and you learn in training, but you also learn in playing yourself. And in all of these situations, anything you don't know, the community and the forums and what's out there is always so helpful that once you've learned it, you learn it across all of those different facets of your Tableau use.
Brilliant. Okay, guys, I'm conscious of time. It's 20 past 1. We got our timing pretty well, but we will probably wrap it up there if that's okay with everybody. I want to say a few thank yous. Melody, and I'm not joking here. Melody Chung for the music special was the person behind the scenes who helped us this week. So thank you to Melody. She's gone now, but I want to thank her for helping us, and Caroline Yam obviously as well, who helped out. Katie, thanks a lot for helping out and coming along. You kind of looked after the webinar chat there, so that was really great. Thanks a lot. But more than anything, I really want to thank everybody for attending, and of course Skyler Johnson, who has been up since the crack of dawn, and who gave us such a great presentation all the way from North Carolina. I really appreciate it. And Neil in Derby, really, I mean, the two of you, it was just absolutely fantastic and really enjoyable and really colourful, and it just shows, you know, what can be done with the tool and the way that it can be used, and more than anything, the insights that can be gained in so many different ways from the data that is everywhere and in everything. And I think that's the big takeaway from it. I mean, just the data and musical notes even. I mean, it's just fabulous what you've shown us there. So it's really appreciated. And without further ado, I think we'll leave it at that. Guys, thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it. I'm going to stay on and be the last to let everybody out. So I'll let you guys go, and I'll say bye-bye and well done. And hopefully we'll see you all around Christmas time for a Christmas Tableau user group of sorts. We'll arrange something in mid-December.
Sounds good. Cheers, Johnny.
Great stuff, guys. Thanks a lot, Neil. Thanks,
Neil.
Katie.
Thanks,
Thanks, Skyler.
Bye.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, guys. Now, I'm going to end it there. I'll stop the recording. See you later, guys.